how exactly are these elections impacting South Asia? What could the election of the new US president mean for the region? Let's go across to Dhaka, Bangladesh, where we are joined by Ambassador Munshi Faiz Ahmed, the Chairman, Board of Governors, Bangladesh Institute of International and Strategic Studies. He was also Bangladesh's ambassador to China. Also joining me in the studio are my colleagues, as well as Saad Hammadi, our bureau chief in Bangladesh. In the studio, of course, is Padma Rao. She is senior international correspondent at WION. Also joining me is Ramesh Ramachandran, again, and correspondent with WION. We're going to talk a lot about exactly what's going on. But before we do that, in recent times, Bangladesh has seen a spurt in terrorist activities. The July attack on a bakery shocked the world. The earlier Bangladeshi government under Khaleda Zia was seen as soft by many in terms of local jihadists. Now, Sheikh Hasina, the current Prime Minister, however, is seen as more aligned with the US and India on tackling terror. To their credit, both the candidates in the US presidential polls, Ms. Clinton and Mr. Trump, have been talking tough on terror. Let's take a look at a report that has been sent in by my colleague Saad Hammadi on that. All right, we'll get you that report in a bit, but let's get to the discussion right away. My first question, of course, goes across to Ambassador Faiz Ahmed. First of all, thank you so much for joining us here on WION. Prime Minister Hasina is saddled with the previous government's legacy of, let's say, being soft on terror, although she has been quick to go after those who were behind the murder of bloggers and has generally, it seems, positioned herself as tough on tackling terror. How will this new US dispensation look at Bangladesh with regard to fighting terror?
Well, thank you for having me. As you just said, that the new government under Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina took a zero-tolerance position on terror, and you have seen some of the results that we have gone after the terrorists in a robust way, and it appears that most of the known terrorists have been neutralized, but the vigilance continues. And definitely we will root them all out in the best possible way we can. And the elections, I think, whoever wins the election, whatever administration comes in the United States, we will be working with them closely as we do right now. And I'm sure together, because this problem is, the scourge of terrorism is an international problem, and transboundary problem. So we shall work together to root it out in our own countries and elsewhere as well.
I have a question for you, Ambassador Faiz Ahmed. To what extent is the United States administration already cooperating with Madam Sheikh Hasina's government on counterterrorism, and also do you expect that to change drastically under either of the candidates in the United States? I mean, how will it pan out, counterterrorism cooperation under Hillary Clinton, and how is that likely to pan out under Mr. Donald Trump should he become the president?
Well, we have at the moment excellent cooperation with the US administration on combating terrorism. We share information. We cooperate on capacity building, training, and on equipments. And we have been working very closely, as I've said earlier. And I don't think it will make a difference, whoever comes to power, because in the United States, it's not the individuals who decide everything. I think we are very respectful of the institutions in the United States, and we know that the institutions work as teams, and there are checks and balances. So we do not expect any major or radical changes in policies overnight. And I think this is an issue that is close to the heart of both the candidates, and whoever comes to power, we should see the excellent cooperation that we have continue, and wherever possible further expanded and intensify.
Right, Ramesh, as the ambassador is pointing out, terror isn't really something that has just impacted Bangladesh when it comes to the South Asia region. Do you agree with him in the sense that no matter which candidate really ends up winning the election, terror is going to take center stage in terms of the United States' relationship with India, with Bangladesh, and with Pakistan as well?
Indeed, Aisha, terrorism is a recurrent theme insofar as South Asia is concerned, be it India, be it Bangladesh, be it Afghanistan, and all this because the so-called epicenter of terrorism lies in very much in the South Asian neighborhood, and Bangladesh and India are not immune to the effects of terrorism. But that said, in addition to what Ambassador Ahmed said, I will add another T, and that's trade. Now, trade is important to Bangladesh, given the fact that it's a largely exporting nation, textile exports, garment exports to the West, including the US. So trade, in addition to terrorism, can be expected to play a vital role as far as Bangladesh economy goes, and to that extent, by extension rather, the foreign policy. So a lot will depend on who it might be in the US presidential White House after the results come out. But that said, Clinton, by virtue of her democratic credentials, is more likely to be open to global trade, more likely to be open to regional trading blocs as compared to a Donald Trump. So there again, that said, I mean, a lot of emphasis can be expected to be placed on policy more than personality, but their differences are apparent.
All right. Padma, you would like to?
Yes, I would like to actually go back to Ambassador and ask him a question. As my colleague Ramesh pointed out, trade, the US is Bangladesh, the US is the largest importer from Bangladesh, or rather Bangladesh's main export target is the United States. So referring specifically to Mr. Donald Trump, he's been speaking a lot about outsourcing, and I'd like to ask the ambassador that the garment industry in Bangladesh is actually the #1 source of income for Bangladesh. It has done extremely well, so that is a form of outsourcing, Ambassador. Would you say that that is likely to suffer, that the garment industry is likely to take a blow if Mr. Donald Trump comes to power?
I'm not going to be too worried about it because I think, #1, Bangladesh really does not enjoy a lot of special concessions from the United States right now. We are competing with other countries and entering the US market. And the products that we make in Bangladesh mostly are not very high-end products. And these are, I mean, most American factories are not going to make these products. So they are going to continue to import them from the sources where they get them at the best terms and conditions. So therefore, I think Bangladesh will not be affected too much, whoever the winner in the election is.
Right, Ambassador. In fact,
but I'd like to,
please carry on.
Yes, I was trying to suggest that terrorism will not take center stage. It will be important. But so many other things are happening between Bangladesh and the United States, including trade. Those will, of course, get more importance.
All right. I'm glad everyone brought trade up because our bureau chief from Bangladesh had also filed a report on, how trade is going to get impacted no matter who ends up winning that race. But before we do that, let's actually go across to Saad. He, of course, joins us also from Bangladesh. Saad, in terms of, tackling the terror angle, we will talk about trade a little later. Who do you think aligns with Bangladesh better on the question of trade? Is it Donald Trump or is it Hillary Clinton?
Look, the foreign policy for Bangladesh has been very clear so far as we have not observed over here. So it's kind of a geopolitical balance that Bangladesh wants to draw across the world, for that matter, with India, China, Russia, and the United States. As far as terrorism is concerned, since the July attack, we've seen a number of attempts being made to bust this terror suspects and terror activities in the country. So when you ask about the alignment of the U.S. president or the U.S. candidate who would be best suited for Bangladesh, by the records, we see that the Democrats have been very good partner with Bangladeshi government in terms of dealing with security and counterterrorism efforts. In case of the Republicans, it's difficult and it's yet to be tested, given what Donald Trump has presented in his presidential debates about how he's going to tackle terror. And that has not been received too well by the foreign policy experts in this country.
Right. Thanks, Saad. I think Padma also has a question.
Yes, I wanted to, actually ask the ambassador and open this up for discussion among us as well. One of the things that Bangladesh is currently fighting is a kind of legacy of terror left behind by the old government. I refer specifically to the passage of, among others, Ayman al-Zawahiri, who was higher up in the hierarchy of the Al-Qaeda, who was reported to have passed, his passage through Chittagong was facilitated at that time. So there's been a lot of talk of connivance and influence of the ISI, Pakistan's ISI, on Islamic fundamentalist groups and factions in Bangladesh. So I'd like to ask the ambassador and in fact Saad, our colleague in Bangladesh, to what extent they see this as a very tough legacy, something which is, in the sense that that Madam Hasina has a far tougher job than would have normally been, she would have normally inherited.
Right, let's listen in from the ambassador first. Ambassador, if you could please respond to Padma's questions. We'll go across to Saad after that.
This problem of terrorism actually emanated from the days of our War of Independence, War of Liberation in 1971. There were some small number of people who were collaborating with the occupation forces at the time, and they were defeated. This they could not forget. And since the independence of Bangladesh, since liberation of Bangladesh, they have been trying to find opportunities of destabilizing the country, and that has always, they have found all kinds of people to work with at different times, and going into these, extremist activities, trying to destabilize the country. And whenever we look at this issue of terrorism in Bangladesh, we see a nexus between those defeated forces and some of the perpetrators of the current day terrorist activities.
Right. Let's take that same question across to Saad. Of course, when we're talking about terror, we can't help but question really if Sheikh Hasina is fighting a legacy left behind by Khalida Zia. Would you agree with the ambassador's assessment, Saad?
Right. What Ambassador Ahmed has just mentioned, there is, of course, a political alignment in these terror activities. Most of what the investigators have found out so far reveal that these terrorist suspects who've been identified have some sort of allegiance with the political parties in this country, and for that matter, the Islamist political parties that are there.
Saad, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to interrupt you. We are going to quickly cut across to the United States. The presidential nominee for the Democrats, Hillary Clinton, is speaking. Remember, she has just finished casting her vote in the 2016 presidential elections. All right, we will of course continue to keep track of the presidential elections. In fact, that is the basis of our conversation right now when it comes to the question of Bangladesh. We did of course speak a little bit about trade expectations, and I did mention a little while earlier the fact that our correspondent Saad Hammadi did send us a report on the trade expectations that Bangladesh has from the new US president. Let's take a look at that report.
85% of Bangladeshi exports to the United States consist of ready-made garments. Yet, the country is the second largest tariff payer in the US after Cambodia. With trade preferences withdrawn after the horrifying Rana Plaza factory disaster in 2013, other major Bangladeshi exports such as leather goods are paying more to enter the US market. Industrialists say that they have fulfilled the conditions prescribed by the US and expect the next administration would reinstate trade preferences for Bangladesh and adopt a less protectionist policy.
Our expectation is we was enjoying GSP facilities from US government. 2013, after Rana Plaza, they stopped our GSP facilities, and they have given some condition to restore that GSP, and we have fulfilled all the conditions. So we hope that the new leadership will come and then they will look into this matter and they will reinstall that GSP facilities. So we expect that we should get duty-free access to the United States.
I think the first concern that we have is the emergence of increased protectionism across the globe. Obviously, given the possibility of a Trump presidency, there are concerns about increased protectionist measures. This whole resurgence of closing down the borders. Now, this may be populist. We don't know how far it will go. We don't know what its chances are. But obviously, that could be damaging to emerging markets like Bangladesh, who need greater access, not less access. So that is a cause for concern. The second issue, I think, is about remittances. You know that the Bangladesh economy has two major mainstays, the first being exports and the other being remittances. So again, the amazing Bangladeshis who live and work in America who remit money back to Bangladesh, this is also a large mainstay of our economy. So if American immigration policies, work permit policies change dramatically, again, in the eventuality of a Trump administration, then this could have an adverse effect on remittance. So we are hoping for an administration that will revive consumer confidence, spending in the US retail economy, because that will then prop up demand for Bangladeshi products and all products in the US market.
Bangladesh's exports are consistently growing, but growth in the US economy has become sluggish. Industrialists hope that the next US administration would reinstate trade preference for Bangladesh and revive consumer confidence through lower tariff and greater market access. This is Saad Hammadi for WION at the Adamji Export Processing Zone in Narayanganj.
So clearly it's not just going to be terror that's going to be part of that conversation impending between Bangladesh and the US under, of course, a new president. It is trade as well that's going to make an impact on the relationship between those two countries. Unfortunately, we have completely run out of time on the program, but I'm going to take this opportunity to thank the Ambassador Ahmed from Bangladesh for joining us for this conversation. Of course, our Bangladesh Bureau Chief Saad Hammadi as well for giving us his time in the studio, Padma Rao and Ramesh Ramachandran. Appreciate you joining us with your perspectives, always appreciated. We are going to wrap up that bulletin on that note. There's lots more on the other side. Stay tuned.